All right, here we are at the boyhood home of the legendary General Nathan Bedford Forrest. I'm here with Gene, who's been so kind and willing to give me a tour today. So I thought he could talk about this far, far better than myself. I'm so grateful for him to be able to be willing to be able to share this video with you.
Well, I don't know, RJ, if I can do a better job than you have. I've enjoyed looking at all the videos you've shot, but we are very honored to have you here today. This is the boyhood home of Confederate General Nathan Bedford Forrest. And the house was originally built by William and Sally Mayfield in 1825. And it was on what was before that a Revolutionary War land grant. And after our first war for independence, the Continental Congress couldn't pay the soldiers, so they gave them land in the Western Territory. And Tennessee wasn't even a state, it was a Western landholding of North Carolina. But General Forrest and his twin sister Franny were born over in Chapel Hill, which is about 6 miles east of where we are right now. And then when he was 9 years old, his father William bought this house from the Mayfields and 81 acres out here and moved the family to this location. And the Forrest family lived here for only 3 years, from 1830 to 1833. And then his grandfather Nathan, that he was named for, had gone down to northern Mississippi for the Chickasaw land purchase. The Chickasaws had been moved out to what is today Oklahoma. It was the Indian nations back then. And he sent word back there's a lot of cheap land down there for settlement. So that's where the Forrest family went. They got tired of breaking off plowshares and trying to clear out the rock in this part of Marshall County. So they packed up and moved to Mississippi. And then this house actually had people living in it up through the early 1960s. And it never had electricity or running water. They had wood burning stoves. There's a well down there at the end of that road, hand dug well, which is still lined with rocks today. And then it was abandoned and just used for storage on the farm. And then in 1972, the state of Tennessee bought this house. It was abandoned and was going to make a little satellite park for Henry Horton State Park, which is just a few miles away from us, and actually started working on it. But then political correctness reared its ugly head, and they panicked and quit working on the home. And when I first started coming down here from Nashville, which is where I live, about 40 miles now north of where we are today, this house was just about gone. First of all, there was no driveway, as you see behind us. You had to park out on the road and walk back here. And I've measured it. It's 5/10 of a mile to hike back here. And the windows were shot out in the house. There was no porch, which is where we're standing now. The roof was just held up with some 2x4s. And there's a barn over there. And you couldn't even see the barn from where we are. It's about 50 yards away. There were so many trees and weeds growing up on it. But two of our state representatives went to the Parks Department and said, well, look, if you're just going to let it fall down, why don't you give it to a nonprofit group that will at least take care of it? So in 1997, this land and 49 acres out here and the house was given to the Sons of Confederate Veterans. And we own the property now and have added some more. So we now have 58 acres and the Nathan Bedford Forrest boyhood home. And that's what we're working on.
That's awesome. It's in good hands again.
Thank you. Yes, it's private property. That's why we got the flag here and out at the main entrance as well.
I loved it. In fact, on the way here, I was taking videos out there, reading some historical signs, but I didn't want to hold you up.
Oh, no, that's fine. We're glad you're here. Glad you're here.
And you were briefly mentioning how the tremendous improvements over a short period
Yes,
of time.
sir. When we go inside, there'll be some before and after pictures. You can take a look at those and see how bad off the house was when it was just abandoned.
That's cool.
Out here. Are you ready to go inside?
Absolutely.
All right, let's go. We'll just leave the door open, get a little more light on the subject. The logs in the house are cedar logs. They are original. The oak floors are original. And the rafters in the ceiling in this room and the ceiling is original. We've tried to keep as much of the original structure as we can. Now, we have made a few improvements, I think. The Forrest family had no shame. They sold t-shirts, they sold books, they sold bumper stickers and prints to try to raise money for the home. But all this is being sold to raise money for the Forrest home. Now, like we said, the logs are original. These rafters in the ceiling are original. The mantle is original. And people have often asked, well, how would a frontier family get a fancy mantle like that? Well, they would have woodworkers that would travel around the country, and they would stay with a family for 6 months or a year and make the doors, the window frames, the mantel, any kind of skilled labor that they needed. Woodworkers would take care of that. We have a young lady up in Brentwood, Cheryl McLean, that has done a lot of work to get the house furnished and try to put period furniture in here. The bookcase, the wardrobe, the spinning wheel, the flax wheel. She got all of those for us. We don't have any furnishings from the Forrest family themselves, but we have a lot of period pieces in here from the mid 1800s. So we're trying to get it back to where it was. And we have a lot of furniture that's antique reproduction that people have given us. And they said, well, we want you to have it. My kids are going to sell this for 25 cents in the yard sale. So why don't y'all take it down there at the Forrest home? And we're very grateful for that. Now, if you can kind of pan around behind you there, we were talking about some of those pictures on the wall in the corner. It'll give you an idea of what the house looked like before the Sons of Confederate Veterans started working on it. And you can see it was pretty rough, in pretty rough shape.
Wow. Before and after. Wow. Before and after.
And then we restored the old barn too. The barn is probably older than the house. That's usually what you would do. You'd get your neighbors together and you could throw up a barn relatively quickly. And those logs in that barn are original too. They're cedar logs, 35 feet long and 20 feet across. And you could throw up a barn relatively quickly and live in your barn and then take your time to build a nicer house to live in. Plus it protected your livestock. And if your livestock died, then you're probably going to be next. Now, that portrait of General Forrest on the wall there, right in the center of the screen, that was painted by and prints made by a young lady that was an artist. The Sons of Confederate Veterans Camp in Nashville, the Joseph E. Johnston camp, got the prints, sold the prints, made the money to have a bust made of General Forrest to place in our state capitol in Nashville and given to the state of Tennessee. We had a slimy weasel that's been elected governor, Slick Willie Lee, that promised when he was running for governor, asked by one of our SCV members, will you protect our Confederate monuments and the Forrest bust in the Capitol? Oh, yes, sir. I'm a conservative Republican. You can count on me. The lying dog wasn't in office 6 months and he started crawfishing. And they've moved the bust of General Forrest out of the Capitol to the State Museum way back in a corner where you really have to hunt to look for it. They wouldn't give it back to the Sons of Confederate Veterans who paid for it and presented it, because we wanted to put it at the Confederate Museum at Elm Springs with the SCV National Headquarters. But that's the portrait that paid for the bust of General Forrest in the state capitol. So, let's see, where else would you like to go? We can go back out on the porch and we'll show you some of our other rooms that we have in here. If you have any questions or anything, just fire away.
Thank you. I remember seeing the bust in the Capitol building before they removed it.
Yes, sir.
Which is outraged like everybody else.
Oh, yeah.
Removed.
Well, I was foolish enough to vote for that lying dog when he first ran. And the second time he ran for election, we got everybody we could in Tennessee to write in Nathan Bedford Forrest for governor. And we were hoping we'd get enough votes to keep him from being reelected. But yes, and all these T-shirts we sell to raise money for the Forrest home.
And so, and that's a very important point, is the donations that makes all this possible.
Yes, sir.
Including all the construction that you're doing out here as
yes,
well.
Sir.
And so let's make sure we include that on this video, and a place where people can call or donate or mail or go to
yes, sir.
some website or some place where they can donate and support this project, because hats off to you, kudos to you for all these tremendous improvements over this course of the years.
Well, we've worked quite a bit out here. It was pretty rough ground, and we've gotten a lot of the rocks covered up or broken out to keep from tearing up our mowing equipment. So, and that's all some of the books that we have for sale.
I just bought this one at the Civil War store. At the ship, it was the author here.
Lee Miller
was there.
Yeah, Lee's there.
Civil War.
Yeah.
The show that was there in Franklin just this last week.
Yes, sir.
Oh, awesome. Well, I'll be coming back here after our tour to pick up some and buy some merchandise.
Okay, be great. Be glad to have you.
Okay, my car is stacked full of these already. I just left about a half dozen over there at the Beech Grove Confederate Cemetery.
Yes, sir.
I decorated the entire cemetery and left about 6 behind.
Great. Now, this is some of the newest shirts we've come up with around here. This one comes from that song, I'm Good Old Rebel by Enos Randolph. That's the last line in that. Little history lesson there.
Oh, excellent.
Who wrote the song? This is another new one we've come up with. These were flags that flew in General Forrest Cavalry Corps. The Forrest Cavalry Corps flag, Terry's Texas Rangers, and John
Nice.
Morton's artillery.
Ooh, nice shirt.
Yes,
That's a
sir.
great shirt too. All these are great shirts.
And then we have that one that says, "We don't care how you did it up north." We hadn't sold too many of those in Chicago. I don't know why, but anyway.
I'm ready to go when you are.
All right. Well, let's go out here on the porch. We will travel around here to the next room. Now this, when the Forrest family lived here, was open. This was a dog trot or a breezeway. And this was the coolest place in the house in the summertime because it was in the shade and the air could pass through here. And I learn a lot from people that come out here. I had a fellow here one time that told me, well, yeah, if this measured, say, 140 inches across here, in the back it'd be 138. And just that little bit of an offset, if there's any air moving at all, it would pull it through here. It's just like a fireplace in a chimney. The fireplace is real big and the chimney gets small and creates a draft and pulls the smoke up the chimney. So, well, when we get our new museum out there, our new building out there, we'll take this out. Somebody in the early 1900s wanted another room, so they closed it in.
And there's that building you're talking about, under construction out there in the distance.
But right now, we're using this sort of as our museum room. We have a McClellan saddle. We have the Cavalry saber, the Sharps carbine. These are not original. This belonged to a reenactor out in California, and he's getting too old to be falling off a horse, so he gave us his uniform and his equipment. Interesting saddle here. The center part cut out. It's called a McClellan saddle. And before the war, when George McClellan and Lee and Jackson and Stewart were all in the U.S. Army, McClellan came up with this idea, or so he claimed, to cut the center part out of the saddle because a horse on a long raid will lose about 100 to 125 pounds. And even with a saddle blanket, when you rub that horse's back, irritate that horse's back and rub that nerve down the spine, you can't ride the horse anymore. So that's to take the pressure off the horse's back. Once again, I learn a lot from people that come through the home. We had a lady here from Russia, and she said, "Oh, well, I know where you got that idea." She said McClellan was an observer in the Crimean War. When the French and English were fighting against the Russians, Crimean Peninsula and Sevastopol and Balaclava and the charge of the Light Brigade and all that, said, that's a Russian Cossack saddle. The Cossacks were using that long before McClellan came along. So he stole their idea and brought it back over here. Now, this painting over here, this is a print that was done by Mr. Jack Knox, who was the editorial cartoonist on the Nashville Banner back when we had a conservative paper in Nashville. And he did a whole series of paintings of historic sites in Middle Tennessee and did one of the Forrest home. And that's where we got the quote down there on the front gate. He rode from here into the legend of the land. And about 5 or 6 years ago, his son, Britt Knox, who was an Army combat helicopter pilot in Vietnam, gave us the original of that painting. So we're really proud to have that here.
You got the original.
Got the original. Yes, sir.
Excellent.
Yes, sir.
Nice.
And now the young lady in the photograph there, those two girls, the one on the left is Mr. Knox's grandmother. That's Laura Galloway. And one of the times Forrest was wounded, he was recuperating at the Galloway house over in Columbia, Tennessee. And when he left her that note that said, "My compliments to Miss Laura. May she never have to mourn another defeat of the Confederate Army, N.B. Forrest, Major General." And the Knox family has that note, and they let us make a copy of it.
Oh, wow.
And everything in the case here we found just working around here. We don't have any military gear. We've got a lot of broken up farm implements. We're always finding a horseshoe. There's a knife blade, a file, a bunch of square nails. And every time it rains, we find more glass and china that was out here on this farm. The flag just to the left of the case here,
Oh, yes.
that was presented to the Sons of Confederate Veterans, or two of us in the Sons of Confederate Veterans, by the Michael Westerman family. Michael Westerman was a young man in Guthrie, Kentucky, and he and his wife were going out on a date. The first time they had a chance to go out after their twin girls were born, they were going out for dinner. He stopped at a convenience store in Guthrie and had a flag, this Confederate flag, on the back of his truck. A carload of blacks pulled in, started giving him a hard time. He got in the car. He and his wife left. They followed him, shot through the door, and shot him and killed him. And then we had a memorial service for him up at the Jefferson Davis Memorial in Fairview, Kentucky, and then at the cemetery for him. And the family, the Westerman family, for us helping them out with that, gave us that flag. And then they asked us to go with them to the trial for these blacks that murdered their son, because they knew there were going to be a lot of blacks there and trying to intimidate them. So we went with the Westerman family. The trial was in Springfield, Tennessee, because they actually shot him in Tennessee across the state line. So that's where they had to have the trial. So that is the Westerman flag.
May he never be forgotten.
That's his picture. And then there's the truck with the flag on it. That's Michael Westerman.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that story.
Yes, sir. We're very proud to have that and honored that the Westerman family would give that to us. The painting up here is a print of a painting done about Forrest returning here. David Wright did the painting. In fact, he's done a lot of Confederate paintings. We'll show you a couple of others too. And we do know that Forrest came back here several times during the winter and spring of 1863. He was stationed in Columbia, and he would come over here because this house is off the beaten path, and it's pretty safe from the Yankees up in Franklin or Murfreesboro. So he would come here to recruit and feed his troops. And he had a lot of his family that was still living in this area. He had a cousin that had a mill down on the Duck River, so he could get corn ground down there for cornmeal. So David got a bunch of us down here one Saturday morning and took pictures, and then went back to his studio and did the big painting. And then we had prints made, and the United Daughters of the Confederacy sold the prints, and that's where we got a lot of our money for our restoration work here. So David said, I need some of you to line up here like you're being recruited. So I was standing there with my coat over my arm. And then that's Jeff Rector and I. We didn't have a fence. We just turned up a wooden pallet for the picture. But my big contribution to the art world that I'm so proud of, and I like to brag to our guests that come through here, I posed for that horse's rear end right there. I think you can probably see the resemblance. It's just, it's just, my hair was a lot lighter back then. It kind of fools people every once in a while. And David also did this painting of Forrest on the wall behind us here. That was Forrest raid into West Tennessee in December of 1862.
No, I've seen this one around.
Yes,
beautiful painting.
That's a tough looking face, isn't it? Boy, I wouldn't mess with him.
Beautiful painting.
And then this is Confederate Flag Day, which is always the first Saturday in March that we have out here, and all the different types of Confederate flags. And this is interesting. We think that this was on the backside of that Patrick Claiborne monument where he was killed on the battlefield at Franklin. And it was on private property, and it was torn down and then used for the foundation in a house. And we think this plaque with Claiborne on it was on the other side of that monument. And a gentleman found this about 10 or 15 years ago in a flea market over in Arkansas and bought it.
Wow.
And asked us if we would keep it until they rebuilt the Claiborne monument on the battlefield at Franklin, which is not going to happen. Franklin has been taken over by carpetbaggers.
Oh, yeah.
And they may put up a monument of Confederate soldiers beating the slaves, but they're not going to put up any more Confederate monuments out there. So anyway, maybe our Sons of Confederate Veterans Camp owns Winstead Hill, south of Franklin, where there are about 14 Confederate monuments there. So maybe one of these days we can rebuild a replica of that monument and put this back up there where it's supposed to be.
Yes, I encourage everybody to go to Winstead Field.
Winstead Hill is about 2 miles south of Franklin. It's on Highway 31, Columbia Pike, if you're heading south out of Franklin. As you go up that hill, there's a cannon and a flagpole there, a whole bunch of monuments there that you can read the inscriptions on the monuments. And we would like, and a donation box. We would appreciate a donation too.
Thank you for maintaining that place.
For maintaining it, yes, sir.
Over the years.
Oh, great.
I love that place. Love going through there.
Good.
And in fact, I mentioned that they just dedicated 2 new monuments at Lee Jackson Park there, just north of Lexington, Virginia.
Yes, sir.
And so I mentioned that parks because it's the same idea. They had just dedicated a monument to North Carolina and South Carolina. I said, hey, keep on going. They said they're going to have one for every state. That's how That's how it was over in that park that you're speaking of, just south of Nashville.
Yes, sir. Now we've had 6 weddings out here, And a lot of times the ladies like to wear the antebellum dresses and the gentlemen the Confederate uniforms. We've had 3 music videos that have been shot out here. And Joey and Rory filmed Josephine out here. And this was about 2 years before she died of cancer. And
whoa.
they were such nice people. That's Rory and Joey. And it's a story about a Confederate writing home to his wife Josephine and talking about how bad the conditions are and how many guys have died of a fever and freezing cold. And so he wrote this song from letters that he read about this Confederate boy writing home to his wife. And so if you want to go online, type in Joey and Rory Josephine, and you'll see a lot of sites out here, and you'll say, well, I know where they filmed that. I was looking at that. I've seen that. That's where they filmed that scene right there. But just super nice people. We're glad to have it.
I'm going to go look that up.
Glad to help them out. Well, that kind of takes care of our history room. Like I said, when we get our new building out there, we'll move this all out and take it back open like it was.
One of the first things I noticed is I love to see historical sites too. Love to be able to document these historical markers. And because I've noticed there's a lot that the leftists, the neo-Marxists, are actually removing and cutting down actual historical markers on different places.
This was our first sign that was out front. And we had some multicultural neighbors that used to have a big 4th of July whoop-de-doo. And I don't know, they broke it. Somebody did break it on the 4th of July. So we got another marker. The next 4th of July, the one you see down front is the second one. This is the first one. The next 4th of July, I just happened to be working down front. And there was a rifle sticking up in the bed of my pickup truck and a holster with a 357 and a barrel that came down to right about here. And surprise, on July 5th, the sign was still there. So it just proves what Al Capone said was right. You get a lot more with a kind word and a gun than just a kind word. So words to live by.
Amen. Amen. Well, thank you.
All right.
No. All right. That makes sure.
That's a quote from Lee. Someone asked Lee, the greatest individual in the war, a man I've never met, Bedford Forrest from Tennessee. He was president of Washington College at that time. He gave him that quote. And this is a quote from Jefferson Davis. He admitted he was wrong about Forrest. He thought he was just a raider. And he was advised by other people that had given him bad information, mainly Braxton Bragg. And he realized too late in the war the potential that Forrest had. Here's something I think our viewers might like listening to. Forrest had the concept of how the war should be fought. He wasn't some ignorant backwoodsman that didn't know up from down. In fact, when the war started, he was a very successful businessman. He was worth well over $1.5 million, which today would be about 40 to 50 million. And he knew that there's no way the South could win a war of attrition. And Davis and unfortunately Lee and the government in Richmond felt that if they won one big battle and destroyed the Army of the Potomac, threatened Washington, the war would be over and we'd get our independence. Well, they won a lot of battles. First Manassas, Second Manassas, Chancellorsville, Fredericksburg. They won all of these, but they didn't destroy the Army of the Potomac. And so the North had an unlimited supply of manpower, and when they ran out and the Yankee boys got tired of fighting, they just brought boatloads of Irish and Germans over here. Forrest, on the other hand, never fought these large armies head to head. He went around behind them and cut their supply lines and tore up their communications. So he stopped Grant, he stopped Sherman, he stopped Rosecrans, and he stopped Buell. And he never once fought their army head to head. He just swung around behind them, cut their supplies, took their cavalry out. Grant turned around and went skedaddling back up to Memphis, had to wait for the Federal Navy to take him downriver to Vicksburg. Sherman, after the fall of Vicksburg, was going across to Selma, Alabama. Forrest took out his cavalry. Sherman stopped in Meridian, Mississippi. No cavalry. He turned around and hustled back to Vicksburg. Rosecrans and Buell were both trying to take Chattanooga at different times. Forrest simply went behind them, cut the railroad, the raid on Murfreesboro that we were talking about earlier, took out the railroad, took out the communications. They turned around and went back to Nashville. Never once fought them head to head. He understood how the war should have been fought. He was just way ahead of his time. He was the Viet Cong of his day, I guess you could say. All right, let's go on down the porch here. We'll have to excuse, we're doing some repair work on the railing here. We always have some kind of repair project going on out here. So we think this was probably used as their combination kitchen and dining room. And we've had historians that have told us they think this was the cabin that Forrest was born in over in Chapel Hill, which makes sense. I mean, you had 5 children out here. Why would you leave an empty cabin sitting over there? Took it down, brought it out here, put it back together, extended the roof. I'm old, but I'm not that old, so I can't tell you for sure if it was or it wasn't. But this was what they probably used as their combination kitchen and dining room. Now, we left the paneling on the wall in here, but the state historian told us that probably when the Forrest family lived here, they didn't have this paneling on the wall, but it is from the 1800s, so we left it. And the other room that we were where we first started, there was so much water damage in there, we took it down. Once again, the furnishings we have here, Cheryl McLean has helped us out a lot. The pewter plates and mugs on the table, she got those for us. The pie safe is from the 1800s. It's just not the Forrest family. And the drop leaf table, that's also from the 1800s. Cheryl also got us a lot of the pots and pans and skillets on the fireplace. And she's done a great job helping us furnish the home and make it look like somebody's living in here. The 2 doors are original, the front door and the back door to the house. And let's see what else we have. This is kind of interesting. We might get a shot of it outside. These 2 cabinets actually extend outside of the house. And there's a little roof that's built over these cabinets. Then the shelves when they go outside the house there. And the fellow that's done all the work for us, restoration work, Elton Winslow, just lives a couple of miles up the road. He found a photograph online of an old frontier table and made this table for us. And if you notice, there are no nails in it. It's all pegged and tongue and groove, and the same thing for the benches. That's what they did back in those days. The nails were hard to come by, and they were very expensive, so they figured out how to put wood together without using nails.
That is impressive. Oh, wonderful.
Well, that concludes your tour of the interior of the Nathan Bedford Forrest Boyhood Home, Chapel Hill, Tennessee. We hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you learned a little bit about frontier life and a little bit about the early life of the great Confederate general. Thank you very much for taking your time to be here. RJ, we appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Love the tour. I encourage everybody to come out here, help support, donate, get involved, participate. So thank you for all your efforts, and everybody else's efforts for maintaining this really very important historical site.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you being here.